All right, let's dive into a civilization that never ceases to amaze me. The Maya. We're talking stunning cities, incredible knowledge, and a collapse shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, it's like they looked up at the night sky and just understood the universe in a way we're still trying to. Even with everything we've dug up about them, the Maya still find ways to surprise us.
And on that note, this deep dive takes us right into their world at their peak, call it 250 to 900 AD. Think cities like Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza. These weren't just settlements, they were sprawling urban landscapes. Pyramids, ball courts, palaces.
And don't forget, those cities weren't just impressive to look at. I mean, the Maya built them with a deep understanding of astronomy, reflecting their belief that the cosmos influenced their entire lives.
It's like they designed their cities to be giant calendars and observatories all rolled into one.
Exactly. And speaking of calendars, this episode does a good job explaining that whole 2012 thing, which, and I can't believe we're still talking about this, was never, ever an apocalyptic prediction.
Thankfully, we're all still here.
Right. The Maya weren't talking about the end of the world, just the end of a cycle, what they called a back tune. It's almost like, how do I explain this? Think of it like your car's odometer. Once it hits a certain number, it just flips back to zero. That's kind of how the Maya saw these cycles repeating for all eternity.
So it wasn't just about marking time in these huge cycles, though, right? They were also keeping track of things like the movements of Venus, as this episode talks about.
And get this, they were so good at it, they could predict solar eclipses. Can you imagine? No telescopes, no fancy computers, just their own intellect and the naked eye, figuring out the dance of the heavens.
It really shows you how much they knew, how much they observed. Like, today we have apps for that. But it was more than just tracking time and celestial events for the sake of it, wasn't it? This knowledge was woven into the fabric of their beliefs and rituals.
Absolutely. To them, the universe was all about balance, with the gods influencing everything. And by understanding how the stars and planets moved, the Maya believed they could maintain harmony between the heavens and the earth.
Okay, hold on. So are we saying they used their astronomical knowledge to, like, appease the gods and guarantee things like good harvests?
Exactly. It's amazing how they wove together what we might call science and spirituality. But this intellectual prowess, it wasn't just limited to, astronomy and calendars. Yeah. Don't forget about their advancements in mathematics.
Oh, right. This episode mentions how they developed the concept of zero independently. It seems so simple now, but that was revolutionary.
It really was. It wasn't just about counting, right? Zero was a whole new way to understand numbers and how they related to each other. It's what allowed them to express complex mathematical ideas, develop that incredibly intricate calendar, make advancements that influenced civilizations that came after them.
And when you think about how many other civilizations at the time hadn't even grasped that concept, it makes it even more impressive. It's really kind of humbling when you think about a civilization achieving that level of knowledge, especially without all the, gadgets and technology we have today.
It does make you wonder what we could accomplish if we had that same, connection with the natural world, that dedication to observation.
Right. It's amazing. But then there's the flip side, the question that continues to baffle historians. What happened? What caused this advanced civilization to decline? And that's where this episode really digs in.
And it really emphasizes how there's no easy answer. There wasn't some big event or anything. It's more like a puzzle. Lots of different factors that might have contributed to their downfall.
Yeah, like a perfect storm brewing, right?
Yeah.
Let's break down some of those factors. The episode spends a good chunk of time talking about how vital agriculture was to the Maya.
Absolutely. Being able to grow crops was everything to them.
Yeah.
But it also made them vulnerable, particularly with their use of slash-and-burn agriculture. Worked great short-term, but in the long run, well.
They were essentially clearing forests to plant crops, which could have led to soil depletion. Did they basically outgrow their own ability to feed themselves?
It's possible. And on top of that, you have to factor in climate change. I mean, we talked about how in tune with the natural world they were, but even the Maya couldn't control the weather.
And this episode highlights how a lot of their cities, as magnificent as they were often built in areas without any major rivers.
Exactly. So they didn't have that constant, reliable water source. Instead, they relied heavily on rainwater collection, which, made them incredibly vulnerable to drought.
So imagine a civilization used to regular rainfall suddenly hit with long periods of drought. Crops fail, famine sets in, people struggling to survive. Things could unravel pretty quickly.
Exactly. And when resources become scarce, tensions rise. The episode suggests that these environmental pressures could have intensified conflict between the Maya city-states.
It makes sense. When you're fighting just to survive, conflicts over things like land and resources are bound to happen.
Of course. And just think of the pressure that put on their political systems, this internal strife, on top of the environmental challenges they were already facing. Yeah, it was a recipe for instability and ultimately decline.
It just goes to show that even the most advanced civilizations are still vulnerable to forces outside their control. But here's a question that really stuck with me. Could the Maya have actually become victims of their own success?
Now that is an interesting thought, isn't it? The episode draws a really interesting comparison to the Roman Empire. You have these two very different civilizations, both experiencing incredible periods of expansion, growth, achievement, and yet both ultimately crumbling.
So are we saying that the Maya's drive to build, innovate, expand, all of that, could that have actually contributed to their downfall in the end?
It's the old adage, too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it highlights the importance of balance, even when you're at the height of your power.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how even civilizations can be kind of fragile. But there's this one point this episode makes that really stood out to me. It's not like the Maya just vanished when their cities declined.
Right, and that's what I find so remarkable about them, that resilience. The Maya people are still here, their descendants still live in these areas, and they've kept their culture alive.
It speaks volumes about their heritage, that connection to their past and to their land, passing down those traditions.
Oh, and speaking of connections to the past, this episode reminded me that archaeologists are still out there, making new discoveries about the Maya, digging up these secrets. It's like this huge puzzle they're putting together.
And every new piece they find, every discovery, it just gives us a better understanding of who the Maya were, how they lived. And the exciting thing is, these new discoveries aren't always just confirming what we already thought. Sometimes they're turning our old ideas upside down, showing us whole new sides to this civilization.
Yeah, you can't help but wonder what else is out there, just waiting to be found. What else can we learn about their knowledge, their beliefs, their everyday lives?
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Maya, we're left with, I think, more than just facts on a page or theories. There's a real sense of wonder, a desire to keep exploring.
Definitely. It reminds us that history is a two-way street, always learning, reinterpreting, connecting the past to the present.
Absolutely. And those connections, well, sometimes they're more relevant than we might think. So here's something to think about as we sign off. If you had the chance to ask the Maya just one question, what would it be? What wisdom do you think they could offer us from across the centuries? Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never stop diving deep.